And as survivors of the Maui wildfires work to rebuild their lives and homes, some may be facing so-called fire brain. It's cognitive and physical issues caused by breathing in tiny particles from those wildfires. These effects can appear weeks, months, or even years after the fire. So to help us break this down and what this is and how survivors can cope with these issues, and they're also emotional as well, we want to bring in Adam Brown. He's an associate professor of psychology at the New School. Thanks for joining us. So, I mentioned kind of the things that the victims may be breathing in, but it's not just that. And so I want to kind of start with the psychological and cognitive symptoms of fire brain. First off, the cognitive symptoms. I mean, what are we seeing when someone lives through a traumatic incident like this?
It's a really important question, and one that we're learning a lot about, especially as climate-related incidents become more and more common. One of the things we're seeing is that repeated exposure, chronic exposure to poor air quality can have negative impacts not on our overall health in general, but on our brain health and cognitive health in particular. There are a couple of parts of our cognitive functioning that seem to be especially susceptible to poor air quality, and that's things like memory and executive cognitive control. Wildfires in particular, due to their very complex composition, the size of the air particles seem to be particularly lead to susceptibilities in our brain, causing issues with concentration, memory, and attention.
And then it's no surprise that there's an emotional impact, right? I mean, you live through a traumatic experience. There's going to be all the sort of signs of trauma. But I thought what was really interesting about the wildfire is the possible connection to climate change and nature, and the expectation that nature is a place that you can go to find peace, and suddenly all around you is no longer safe.
I've been studying trauma now for a couple of decades, and I think one of the things that is so central to a traumatic experience is what we might think of a betrayal, some kind of expectation that a place is safe or a person is safe, or a certain kind of experience is where we find home and meaning. And when that place suddenly becomes a place of danger, it's really difficult to grapple with and to make meaning and move on from. So in many ways, I think when we look at the psychological impact of things like wildfires, it doesn't surprise me that so many people are struggling in the immediate aftermath to make sense of it.
And in this case, when we're talking about Maui, we don't know what the death toll is ultimately going to be, but the expectation is it's going to rise. 1,000 people are still missing. I assume that there is an element of survivor's guilt as well. What are the steps to cope with something like that?
I mean, I think first it's to recognize that it's incredibly common. When we witness horrible things happening to people that we care about or in a place that, has a connection to us, we have to make sure that we're aware of how it's impacting us personally. And it can make us feel very helpless. And what I often recommend to people is to see if there are actionable, simple things that you can do to contribute back, whether it's calling a person and checking in, making a donation, seeing what humanitarian organizations are doing, and seeing if there's a way to help.
Yeah, that is absolutely great advice. And I was even sort of thinking of that in relation to a climate change catastrophe, like, we don't know, but like possibly this one, in that, the thing with climate change is often we feel so helpless. And as soon as we sort of have a roadmap of things we can do, feeling empowered can go a long way. And I imagine it's the same for people who are living through this trauma, for the rest of their lives. Adam Brown, thank you very much.
Thank you.